The DNA results came back on a Tuesday. Kemi sat in the break room of the Hackney hospital where she cleaned floors for 11 pounds an hour, her phone face down on the table, her lunch going cold beside her. She already knew what the results would say. She had known the moment her daughter Zara looked up at her with those amber eyes. Amber like nobody on Kemi's side, amber like nobody she had ever met in Lagos or London, and asked, "Mummy, why don't I look like you?" She had told herself it was the genes folding back, recessive things, old blood surfacing. She had told herself a lot of things about Emmanuel. She turned the phone over. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0. Not low, not uncertain. 0. Kemi did not cry. She sat very still and watched a pigeon on the window ledge outside peck at something dead, and she thought about the last 9 years of her life the way you think about a house fire after the smoke is cleared. Not with grief, not yet, but with the slow, cold arithmetic of everything that has been lost. She picked up her lunch. She ate every bite. She had cleaning to finish on the 3rd floor. She would not waste a single thing more on Emmanuel Adeyemi. She had come to London from Ogun State in 2013, 23 years old, and carrying everything she owned in one suitcase and one prayer. Her aunt had sponsored her visa, found her the hospital job, given her a room in a flat in Peckham that smelled of cooking oil and old carpet. Kemi had not complained about any of it. She came from a family that did not complain. Her mother used to say, "Mouth open, luck flies out." So she worked. She sent money home. She studied for her healthcare assistant exams on the night bus and slept 4 hours and woke up and did it again. Emmanuel found her at a Niger party in Lewisham in 2014. He was Yoruba, she was Yoruba, and he was beautiful in the particular way that dangerous men are beautiful. Easy smile, unhurried like the world owed him time. He sold insurance, or said he did. He wore good shoes and smelled like cedar, and he told her she was the most serious woman he had ever met. And he meant it as a compliment, and somehow that was the thing that broke her open. She was serious. She was tired of being only serious. She wanted something soft. He was soft with her in the beginning. Gentle. He came to her aunt's flat with plantain and palm wine and sat with the old woman and spoke Yoruba proverbs until her aunt laughed and said, "This one has home training." He called Kemi every night before she slept. He remembered small things, the name of her childhood dog, the way she took her tea, the fact that she was afraid of lifts. He took the stairs with her, always without being asked. She fell the way sensible people fall, slowly, then completely. They married in 2015 in a registry office in Southwark with 12 people and a second-hand dress that she altered herself because she was good with her hands and careful with money. He promised her a proper ceremony back home when the money comes good. The money never quite came good. There was always a reason. A client who hadn't paid. A deal that was pending. A setback that would correct itself by next quarter. She stopped tracking his reasons after a while. She was pregnant by then and tired in the deep animal way that pregnancy makes you tired. And she thought, this is just how marriage is. You carry more than you planned. You adjust. Zara was born in 2016, small and loud and perfect. Kemi looked at her daughter's face in the delivery room and felt something so large move through her chest that she couldn't name it. Not happiness exactly, something older than happiness. Emmanuel held the baby for 4 minutes and then said he needed air. He was gone for 2 hours. He came back smelling of cigarettes he'd supposedly quit. He said the emotion had overwhelmed him. She believed him because she wanted to, because the alternative, that he was already somewhere else in his mind, that he had been somewhere else for longer than she knew, was a thought she wasn't ready to think. She tucked it away. She went back to work when Zara was 3 months old because the rent was due. The years moved the way difficult years move, too fast in memory, too slow while living them. Zara grew. Emmanuel stayed and was somehow never quite present, the way a door can be open and still let in no air. He worked irregularly. He came home late and left early, and his phone was always turned face down, always on silent, and when Kemi asked him anything direct, his answers were smooth as river stones, shaped by water, by the constant flow of having to explain himself to someone. She noticed things, filed them away in the part of herself she didn't visit. The Ghanaian woman who called twice and hung up. The hotel receipt in his jacket she found when she was looking for the car keys. The weekends when his signal died completely. No network. He said he'd been up in Manchester, up in Birmingham, up somewhere the towers didn't reach, somewhere convenient. She noticed. She said nothing. She was serious, remember. Serious women don't make noise until they know what they're saying. The crack came in 2023 when Zara was 7. Her daughter's school was doing a family heritage project. The kind British schools love. Draw your family tree. Bring in something from your culture. Show us where you come from. Zara had come home with her worksheet and sat next to Kemi at the kitchen table and looked at the blank box where her father's parents should go and looked at her own hands and said, "Mummy, why am I lighter than you? Why are my eyes this color?" Kemi had answered carefully, "Genes are complicated, baby. The blood mixes in funny ways." But she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, and she thought about Amber. She thought about Emmanuel's mother, whom she had met exactly twice, a dark-skinned Ondo woman with black eyes. She thought about Emmanuel's father, same. She thought about her own people. She didn't need to think long. Everyone was brown and black-eyed going back, as far as the stories went. She thought, where did Amber come from? And then, very quietly, underneath all the other thoughts, she thought, has he ever actually been her father? If this story is opening something up in you, if you've been sitting with something you couldn't name, you're not alone. Subscribe so you never miss a new story. New uploads every week. She did not confront him. Kemi had grown up watching her mother confront her father, loud and direct and furious, and watched her father absorb every confrontation like a sponge and give back nothing, change nothing, be nothing different on the other side. She had learned then that confrontation without evidence is just noise. And noise, her mother used to say, only warns the cat. She ordered the home DNA test online on her lunch break. 47 pounds. She felt no guilt about it whatsoever. Getting Emmanuel's sample was simple. He left his toothbrush in the holder every morning. She swabbed it. She sent it off with a strand of Zara's hair and waited. While she waited, she started looking. Not frantically. She'd never been frantic. Methodically, the way she had always done things. She found a second phone in 3 days. It was in the inner pocket of his winter coat, tucked flat, an old Samsung with a cracked screen and no case. The kind of phone you keep because you're not attached to it, because it can be dropped and replaced without grief. She photographed everything on it before she put it back exactly where she found it. There were 3 women. Not one. 3. One in Manchester. A Jamaican woman named Stacy, and from the messages she had been in Emmanuel's life for at least 4 years. The messages were not flirtatious. They were domestic. Did you eat? Did you take your medication? I told the boys you're coming Saturday. Kemi stared at that line for a long time. The boys. Plural. One in Dublin. A Nigerian woman, Igbo, named Chisholm, who sent him long voice notes that Kemi couldn't hear, but whose text messages were brief and logistical. Hotel names. Dates. Transfer the money before Friday this time. One in London, Peckham, 15 minutes away, named Sharon, British Jamaican, who sent him photographs of herself that Kemi saw and then didn't need to see more of. Stacy in Manchester had boys. Kemi sat with that for the whole night. Boys. She thought about Emmanuel telling her, in the early years, that he didn't want children yet, that he wasn't ready, that he wanted them to be stable first. She had waited. She had adjusted her timeline for him. She had pushed back her own, wanting to accommodate his readiness. And in Manchester, there were boys. She didn't sleep. She made tea at 4 a.m. and sat at the kitchen table and thought clearly and without drama about what she was dealing with. Not a man who had made a mistake. Not a man who had slipped once and was drowning in shame. A man who had built a second life, possibly a third, possibly more, and maintained it for years, across cities, across borders, with the calm efficiency of someone who had decided that other people's pain was not his problem. She had married a stranger. She had cleaned that stranger's house and cooked that stranger's food and built that stranger's comfort for 9 years. The DNA results arrived 11 days later. 0%. She went back to work the next morning. Third floor. Same mop. Same corridors. But something had shifted in her. Not broken. She wanted to be clear about that, even just to herself. Not broken. Shifted. The way a bone that has been set moves. Sharp and final, and now pointing in the right direction. She called her cousin Kemi that evening. Kemi was a paralegal in Islington, sharp and calm, and the kind of woman who read the small print before she signed anything. Kemi told her everything. She did not cry. She laid it out like a report. When she finished, Kemi was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Are you recording?" "Not yet," Kemi said. "Start." She recorded for 6 weeks. She was not reckless about it. Kemi had explained what was admissible and what wasn't, and Kemi listened carefully and did exactly what she was told. She was very good at doing what she was told when the instructions made sense. Emmanuel, meanwhile, behaved exactly as he always had, which was to say, as though nothing was wrong, as though the world was as he had arranged it, as though Kemi was a fixture in his life the way the sofa was a fixture, useful and permanent and uncomplaining. He came home from Manchester on a Sunday, in March, smelling of a fabric softener they didn't own. He kissed Kemi on the cheek. He ruffled Zara's hair and called her his baby. Kemi watched him do it and felt something cold and precise move through her chest. His baby. She said nothing. She plated his food. She had learned by now that Emmanuel had a mortgage in Manchester. Not a rental, a mortgage in joint names, his and Stacy's, taken out in 2017. 1 year after Zara was born. She had found this through the land registry, which Kemi had shown her how to search. £47 for the DNA test. Free for the land registry. She found other things too. The insurance business was real. Partially. There was a registered company. But there were also loans. Personal loans totaling over £60,000. Some taken out jointly with Stacy. One with Kemi's name on it that she did not remember signing. On a date, she would have been at work on the 3rd floor of a Hackney hospital, nowhere near the bank that had issued it. Identity fraud is a serious offense in England. Kemi had explained this to her as well. By April, Kemi had a folder. A real folder, printed and organized by category, the way she had always organized things, paperwork, receipts, evidence of a life she had been living in the wrong house. She had the DNA results. She had photographs of the phone. She had the land registry documents. She had the bank statements showing transfers to Stacy's account over 4 years. Small amounts, £50, £70, money she had assumed was for his mother. Money she had never questioned because she had trusted him and she had been busy and she had believed, wrongly, that serious women didn't need to check. She brought the folder to a solicitor in Dalston who specialized in family law. The solicitor read it without expression. When she finished, she looked up and said, "This is quite thorough." "I know," Kemi said. They talked for an hour. Kemi left with a list. The conversation with Emmanuel happened on a Friday evening in May. Zara was at her aunt's. Kemi had arranged that. She had also arranged to have Kemi in the flat. Not in the room, just in the flat, in the kitchen, quiet, present. She was serious, not foolish. She made tea. She put on the table in front of him. She sat down across from him, and she put the folder on the table between them, and she waited. He looked at the folder. He looked at her. He smiled, the automatic smile, the one that had always worked. Easy, unhurried. "What's all this?" "You tell me," she said. She opened to the DNA results first. He looked at them. The smile stayed exactly where it was, which told her everything she needed to know about how many times he had managed his way through a moment that should have unmade him. "Those things are inaccurate," he said. 0%, she said, which is not a margin of error. "That is an answer." He went through his phases. She had watched men go through their phases in films and in other women's kitchens, and she had thought it looked theatrical. It did not look theatrical when it was happening across her own table. He tried charm. He tried minimizing. He tried anger, a brief hot flash of it. "You went through my things," and she just looked at him until it died. Then he tried the one she had been waiting for. "I can explain everything." "Let me explain. There were circumstances you don't understand, Kemi. Things that happened before we married. I was in a situation. Stacy's boys," she said. He stopped. "How old are they?" Silence. "The mortgage is from 2017, she said. "But you were with her before that." I want to know how old the boys are." He looked at her for a long time. And she would think about this moment for the rest of her life. Not with rage, not anymore, but with a strange, clear, almost scientific interest. He looked at her and said, "This doesn't have to be a problem. We can work this out." "Yes," she said, "we can. My solicitor has sent paperwork to your office, your Manchester address, and your mother's address in case you go to ground. The police have a fraud report about the loan in my name, and I have applied for sole parental responsibility for Zara, which, given that you are not her biological father and have no legal parental rights, should be straightforward." She closed the folder. "You have until Tuesday to leave this flat. The lease is in my name." He sat there for a moment that stretched like something tearing slowly. Then he got up. He didn't say anything. He went to the bedroom, and she heard him opening drawers, and she sat at the table and drank her tea and did not move. Kemi came quietly from the kitchen and sat down beside her. They didn't speak. They just sat there together in the kitchen while the sound of drawers opening and closing continued down the hall, while 9 years got packed into whatever bags he had brought with him, while the flat got lighter. He left on Saturday. Not Tuesday, Saturday. Emmanuel had always been efficient when the situation required it. She changed the locks that same afternoon. It cost £60, and she paid it without flinching. The weeks that followed were not easy. She had not expected them to be. There was the financial unraveling, accounts to separate, the fraudulent loan to dispute, which her bank eventually absorbed after 3 months of documentation. There was Zara, who did not know everything and would not know everything for years yet, but who felt the absence the way children feel absences through their skin, through the change in temperature of a room. Kemi told her daughter, "Daddy had to go and sort himself out. He loves you, but he had some things he needed to fix." It wasn't the whole truth. It was the truth that was the right size for a 7-year-old. She would give her the rest when she was ready to carry it. There were nights when she sat in the kitchen after Zara was asleep and felt the weight of it. Not Emmanuel specifically, not his absence, but the weight of having been so careful and still been so wrong. She had checked his shoes and not his heart. She had watched his manners and not his hands. She had believed in the version of a man that a man had performed for her, and no amount of seriousness protected you from a committed performance. She allowed herself those nights. She did not perform strength at midnight with nobody watching, but she got up in the mornings. She made Zara's lunch. She went to work. The fraud case took 7 months. In the end, Emmanuel was charged with identity fraud and obtaining property by deception. The Manchester situation had complications that went beyond Kemi, beyond Stacy, into territory that the police found interesting. Stacy, as it turned out, had also been defrauded and was also in possession of a folder and had also been waiting for the right moment. Women like Kemi and Stacy always end up finding each other, not as friends. The situation was too strange for easy friendship, but as two people who had each held one end of the same rope without knowing the other end existed. They spoke on the phone twice. The conversations were brief and factual. At the end of the second one, Stacy said, "He told me his wife had died in Nigeria before he came to England." "I know," Kemi said. "I believed him. I know." A pause. Then Stacy said, "I'm sorry." Kemi thought about that for a moment. A woman apologizing for being deceived to another woman who had also been deceived, and felt something complicated and soft move through her. "Don't be," she said. "We were lied to by the same person. That's not something either of us should be sorry for." Emmanuel received a suspended sentence and 200 hours of community service. His barrister argued that the fraud had been unsophisticated and the sums involved were limited, and he had shown remorse. The remorse was new. She hadn't seen it during the 9 years. She didn't attend the sentencing. She had Kemi go and report back. She was working. 3rd floor. Same mop. Cleaner corridors now that she wasn't carrying a secret in her chest. She moved flat in September of that year. Not far, still Hackney, still the same bus route, still the same hospital, but a different building, a different key, walls that had never held Emmanuel's ease and carelessness. Zara helped her unpack and put her drawings on the fridge and declared her new bedroom better than the old one because the window looked out onto a tree. Kemi stood in the doorway watching her daughter arrange her stuffed animals on the bed in a very specific order that apparently only Zara understood. And she thought, this is the thing he didn't take. He took time and money and 9 years of trust. He didn't take this. She thought about her mother's saying, mouth open, luck flies out. But sometimes you have to open your mouth. Sometimes you have to say exactly what you know, backed by exactly what you found, and watch a man understand that a serious woman's silence is not compliance. It's preparation. She put the kettle on. She texted Kemi. We're in. Kemi replied. You were always in. He was the one who was never really there. Kemi thought about Zara's eyes sometimes. Amber. Clear. Some man's eyes from somewhere in Emmanuel's lies. A man she would probably never find or name. A piece of Zara's story that might remain a blank. But a blank is not an absence. A blank is just a space that hasn't been filled yet. Zara would grow up knowing that she was loved without condition or performance. She would grow up in a flat with clean walls and her drawings on the fridge, and a mother who had sat quietly for months and gathered everything she needed, and then spoken exactly once, clearly, without raising her voice. She would grow up knowing what it looked like when a woman decided. That was the inheritance Kemi could give her. Everything else, the missing piece, the amber, the unnamed man, that was for later. For when Zara was old enough to hold the full shape of the thing. For now, there was tea. There was a tree outside the window. There was a little girl arranging stuffed animals in a serious and important order. For now, that was enough. Blood doesn't lie, but some men spend their whole lives trying to make it. If this story found you at the right moment, hit subscribe and leave a comment below. Tell me what you felt. Tell me what this opened. Every story on this channel is made for you, for the ones who sit with things in silence and still find a way through. New stories every week. Don't miss the next one.